Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been running a small homestead for a while. Started with just a vegetable garden, then added some fruit trees, and last year I finally built a proper chicken coop. I had 6 hens, which was nice, but I wanted to expand my flock. Eggs from my own chickens just taste better, you know? Plus, I was thinking about selling the extras at the farmer's market to make a little side income. The thing is, buying chickens isn't cheap when you want good layers. I'd been checking Craigslist every few days for deals, hoping someone would be rehoming their flock for a reasonable price. So when I saw an ad for 45 free layer hens, I nearly fell out of my chair. The post said they were the right age, good breed, and the guy was moving for work and needed them gone quickly. It said I could take a few or take all of them and to call anytime. I mean, 45 chickens is way more than I needed, but free is free. I figured I could take maybe 10 or 15 and let someone else get the rest. I called the number right away. The guy who answered sounded absolutely exhausted. I greeted him and told him I was calling about the chickens he posted on Craigslist. He immediately groaned and said not another one. I was confused. He sounded angry, but not at me specifically. More like he was angry at the universe. I asked if it was a bad time, mentioning that the ad said to call anytime. He said of course it did, then told me he didn't have any chickens. He'd never owned chickens. He lived in an apartment. I was baffled and pointed out what the ad said. He told me he knew what it said, but that he didn't post it. Now I was really confused. I almost hung up, but something in his voice made me pause. He sounded desperate, like he was at the end of his rope. I told him I was lost and asked what was going on. There was a long silence. Then he just started talking. I think he needed to vent to someone, and I happened to be the unlucky person who called. He explained that his girlfriend had gone through his phone a few weeks ago and found out he was cheating. She broke up with him, which he admitted was fair because he screwed up. He thought that was it, but then this started. I asked what he meant by this. He told me she'd been posting fake ads on Craigslist with his phone number. The chickens were just the latest one. Before that, it was a motorcycle he didn't own. Before that, it was free fencing materials. He repeated that he lived in an apartment with no yard and no fencing. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, the guy admitted he cheated, so I didn't feel too sorry for him. On the other hand, this sounded like it was driving him crazy. I asked if he couldn't just change his number. He explained it was his work phone that his boss gave him. He couldn't just change it without going through the whole company process, and he'd have to explain why. He said he wasn't about to tell his boss his ex was posting fake Craigslist ads because he cheated on her. I suggested getting the post taken down. He said he did every single time, but she just posted another one in a different category. He'd get the chicken post removed, then suddenly there'd be an ad for a free puppy he found. He'd get that one down, then there'd be one about sharing half a house cheap because he was out of town for work most of the time. His phone had been ringing nonstop for 3 weeks, day and night. The ad always said to call anytime. I had to admit his ex was creative. Evil but creative. I told him that was pretty brutal. He asked if I thought so, then went on to describe how people had shown up at his apartment complex looking for the motorcycle. One guy got really mad when he was told there was no motorcycle. The guy thought he was trying to scam him, or that he'd already sold it to someone else. He got in calls at 2 in the morning from people asking about the puppy. He couldn't sleep or work properly. His boss was starting to notice he was distracted all the time because his phone wouldn't stop ringing. I asked if he'd tried talking to her or apologizing. He said of course he tried, but she blocked him on everything. He couldn't call her, text her, or message her on social media. He even tried showing up at her place, but her roommate told him to leave or she'd call the cops. I suggested going to the police and asked if this wasn't harassment. He said he'd thought about it, but wondered what he was supposed to say. That his ex was posting fake ads online because he cheated on her. He figured they'd probably just laugh at him. He admitted that honestly, he deserved some of this. He just didn't think it would go on this long. I felt kinda bad for the guy even though he brought it on himself. Nobody deserves to have their phone ringing nonstop for weeks. I asked what he was going to do. He said he didn't know. He was thinking about just getting a new phone and eating the cost of breaking his work contract. Maybe telling his boss he lost it or something. He said he couldn't keep living like this. He sounded defeated. I wanted to help, but I had no idea what to do. Then I had an idea. I asked what if he fought fire with fire. He asked what I meant. I suggested he post an ad himself, something like a warning that a scammer was posting fake ads with his number and not to call. Make it really clear so people would stop calling him. He said he tried that, but she reported it and got it taken down within an hour. I said she was good. He agreed and told me about it. We talked for a few more minutes. I suggested blocking numbers that called him, but he said there were too many. I suggested setting his phone to only accept calls from his contacts, but he said he needed to be available for work calls from clients. Every solution I came up with, he'd already tried or couldn't do because of his job. Finally, I wished him luck and hung up. I felt bad for the guy, but there wasn't much I could do. I went back to scrolling Craigslist, and sure enough, within a few hours, there was a new post from his number. This time it was for free firewood that must be picked up today. I never did get my chickens. I've been running my own business for the past 20 years. My husband started his business around the same time I did. His was more of a luxury service, the kind of thing people splurge on when times are good. For most of those 20 years, we did fine. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had what we needed and a little extra. Then things started changing about 5 years ago. People stopped spending money on luxuries. My husband's client base started shrinking, and the money coming in got tighter and tighter. I watched him struggle to keep things going. He took out loans, made some investments that he thought would help turn things around. They didn't. Every month it seemed like we were sinking deeper into debt while his business kept costing more to run than it was bringing in. I knew what was coming before he was ready to admit it. The business he'd poured his heart and soul into for 2 decades was dying. It took months of watching the numbers get worse before he finally agreed to close the doors. I understood how hard this was for him. This wasn't just a job, it was his dream. You don't let go of something like that easily. I tried to be there for him. I listened when he needed to vent. I suggested therapy multiple times because I knew he needed someone professional to help him process this loss. He always refused. I wanted to give him space to grieve what he'd lost. I really did. But the reality of our situation wouldn't wait for him to be ready. My business alone can't support us. Not with all the debt we'd accumulated trying to save his. We have kids to feed, a mortgage to pay, and bills that keep piling up. Neither of us went to college, which I know limits his options. I get that going back to school isn't realistic right now, both financially and because he doesn't want to. But that doesn't change the fact that we need money coming in. The thing is, getting a new job would mean huge changes for him. He'd have a boss for the first time in 20 years. He'd potentially work weekends and odd hours. All the freedom he'd had running his own business would disappear. I understand why that's hard to face, but we don't have a choice. Every time I brought up him finding work, it turned into a fight. I tried to be gentle about it. I acknowledged how difficult this was. I offered support and understanding, but it always ended the same way, with him telling me I was being unreasonable for expecting him to just go get a job. Then his brother's wife showed up at my door last week. She sat down in my kitchen and started talking to me like I was a child who didn't understand basic math. She told me I needed to give him a break and said this was really hard for him. I agreed that I knew it was hard, that I'd been trying to support him through it, but she didn't want to hear that. She accused me of pressuring him to work for someone else after 20 years of being his own boss, asking if I had any idea what I was asking of him. I explained that I was asking him to help keep our family afloat because we couldn't survive on just my income. That's when she suggested I get a second job instead. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I asked when I would even have time for a second job since I already worked full-time, she said lots of people work 2 jobs, and I could do evenings or weekends. I pointed out that would mean I'd never see my kids or my husband, but she called it making a sacrifice for my family. I told her that if my business went under, I go get another job immediately because that's what adults do when they have responsibilities. She insisted it was different because he'd built something from nothing and needed time to recover from the loss. I reminded her that we couldn't afford time because the bills don't stop coming just because someone is sad. She called me incredibly insensitive and said everyone agreed I was being unreasonable about this. When I asked who everyone was, she said the whole family thought I should step up and let him have the space he needs to figure things out. I asked who was going to take care of the kids, pointing out that since he closed the business, he'd actually done less around the house, not more. So if I was working 7 days a week, when exactly would anything else get done? She accused me of making excuses and said a good partner would do whatever it takes. I shot back that a good partner would also recognize when both people need to contribute, and I wasn't asking him to do anything I wouldn't do myself. She left in a huff, making sure to slam my door on the way out. Later that evening, my husband came to me with the same arguments she'd made, word for word in some places. Clearly, they'd coordinated this little intervention. He asked why I was being so stubborn about this and said he needed time. I told him we didn't have time because we were already behind on bills. He suggested I get another job like Karen had said. I refused. When he asked why not, I asked him if the situation were reversed. Would he work 2 jobs so I could sit at home? He didn't answer that. We both knew he wouldn't. The next day, I got calls from his brother and his mother, both telling me what a terrible wife I was being. According to them, I should be grateful my husband had provided for us for 20 years, and now it was my turn to carry the weight. Never mind that. I'd been working the entire time too. I finally had enough. I called a family meeting with everyone who'd been giving me grief about this. I brought our bills, our bank statements, and a calculator. I made them sit there while I went through every expense we had and showed them exactly how much money we needed just to survive. I laid it all out for them. I showed them what we needed per month just for the basics and what my business brought in, then asked them to show me where the second number covered the first one. They couldn't, of course. Then I showed them what a typical entry-level job pays around here and explained that if he worked full-time, that's what it would add to our income. And suddenly, we could pay our bills. My husband's brother tried to argue that he shouldn't have to start over at entry level. I told them all that neither should I have to work myself to death. I said he had 2 choices: get a job or watch us lose everything we've built, including our home. I was done discussing this. I got up and left them sitting there. My husband finally started job hunting the next day. Karen hasn't spoken to me since, which honestly has made my life more peaceful. I'm a police officer and I work the night shift in a suburban district, the kind of area where you'd expect soccer moms and quiet neighborhoods. My training officer used to say I had the patience of a saint, which is probably why I lasted this long in this job without burning out. That night started normal enough. I was patrolling down Main Street around 10 in the evening when I spotted this sedan weaving all over the road. Not just a little drift, I'm talking crossing the center line, nearly clipping a parked car, then overcorrecting so hard the vehicle lurched into the other lane. Classic signs of impaired driving. I hit my lights and followed. The car didn't pull over right away. It kept going for another 2 blocks, which made me nervous. Sometimes people panic. Sometimes they're trying to hide something. Sometimes they're just oblivious. Eventually, it jerked to a stop at an awkward angle against the curb. I approached the driver's side carefully, hand near my belt like I always do. When I got close enough to look inside, my stomach dropped. The driver was a kid. Couldn't have been more than 15 or 16 years old. Skinny arms gripping the wheel like his life depended on it. His face was pale and he looked terrified. There was a woman in the passenger seat. Mid-40s maybe, blonde hair pulled back, makeup smudged. She was staring straight ahead with this tight expression on her face. I asked for his license and registration. The kid just froze. Didn't say a word, didn't move. His hands started shaking on the wheel. I repeated my request, keeping my voice calm and professional. The woman in the passenger seat turned toward me then, and I could smell the alcohol immediately. Her eyes were glassy and unfocused. She told me flatly that he didn't have a license. She said it so matter-of-fact, like she was telling me the sky was blue. I asked her if she was aware that he was driving without a license. She responded with sarcasm, pointing out that she was sitting right there in the car. I asked why he was behind the wheel if he didn't have a license. She explained that she'd had a few drinks and couldn't drive herself. She asked what I expected her to do, sleep in the parking lot. Her tone was defensive and annoyed, like I was the one being unreasonable. This woman had knowingly put her unlicensed minor child behind the wheel of a car while she was intoxicated. The kid was shaking even harder now, and I felt bad for him. This wasn't his fault. I told them both to step out of the vehicle. She immediately protested, saying they were only 2 minutes from home. I repeated my instruction. The kid started to open his door, but she grabbed his arm. She told him not to move and called the whole situation ridiculous. She turned back to me and asked if I could just follow them home instead. I explained that wasn't how this worked. I pointed out that her son had been driving recklessly without a license, and she'd just admitted to telling him to do it while intoxicated. I ordered them both out of the car one more time, making it clear this wasn't optional. She finally got out, stumbling a little when she did. The kid came around the front of the car looking like he might cry. I felt for him, I really did, but I had a job to do. I told him to turn around and put his hands behind his back. She immediately demanded to know what I was doing. I explained that he was going to be detained while I sorted the situation out. She shouted that I couldn't arrest him because he was a child. I clarified that I wasn't arresting him yet, just detaining him during the investigation. I guided the kid's hands behind his back and started to put the cuffs on. He wasn't resisting, wasn't saying anything, just standing there shaking. That's when she completely lost it. She screamed at me to get my hands off her son and rushed toward me. I had to sidestep while holding onto the kid's arm. I told her to step back. She yelled that I couldn't do this, that she'd sue me and have my badge. She was screaming now, and I was trying to finish securing the cuffs on her son while keeping an eye on her. She kept moving around us, yelling, getting closer. I was calling for backup on my radio when she suddenly went quiet. That should have been my warning. She reached into her purse, and before I could react, before I could even process what was happening, she pulled out a canister and sprayed me directly in the face. The pain was instant and overwhelming. My eyes felt like they were on fire. I couldn't see anything except white-hot burning. I heard myself yell and stumbled backward, my hands going to my face. My radio clattered to the ground. I was trying to reach for it, trying to call for help, but I couldn't see, couldn't think through the pain. I heard car doors slamming, an engine revving, the tires squealing. By the time I managed to get my eyes open enough to see through the tears and burning, they were gone. The sedan was already halfway down the block, taillights disappearing around a corner. I finally got my radio, called it in. Backup arrived within minutes. They helped me flush my eyes out, called an ambulance. The paramedics checked me over while other units started searching for the vehicle. It didn't take long. The car was registered to her mother's address across town. Officers found her there within the hour, the car in the driveway, both of them inside trying to act like nothing had happened. She was arrested on the spot, assaulting a police officer, child endangerment, allowing an unlicensed driver, obstruction of justice, fleeing the scene. The list went on. Her son was placed with his grandmother, who apparently had no idea what her daughter had done. I spent the rest of that night in the emergency room getting my eyes treated. They're fine now, but for a few days everything was blurry and painful. The case went to court last month. She tried to claim self-defense, said she felt threatened. The judge didn't buy it for a second. She got 3 years in prison plus probation, and she lost custody of her son. I grew up thinking I had drinking under control. 4 years ago, I was the life of the party, always down for another round, always the last one to leave the bar. I thought I was just having fun. Then one night changed everything. My best friend since middle school was in my passenger seat. We'd been at a bar watching the game and I'd had way too many. I thought I was fine to drive. I wasn't. I wrapped my car around a telephone pole on a back road outside town. I walked away with some bruises and a concussion. He didn't walk away at all. The guilt nearly destroyed me. The legal consequences were one thing, but knowing I'd taken someone's life because I couldn't make a responsible decision was something you carry forever. I went to court-ordered counseling, then kept going on my own. I joined support groups. I rebuilt my life one day at a time, and I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since that night. When I eventually got a new job and started over in a different city, I decided I wasn't going to make my sobriety this big announcement. I didn't want to be known as the recovering alcoholic. I didn't want the looks of pity or the awkward conversations. I just wanted to be a normal guy who happened to drink soda at happy hours. Most people didn't notice or didn't care, and that was exactly what I wanted. But then there was this one coworker. From the very first team outing, he started in on me. He tried to convince me to have just one beer. I'd tell him I was good with water. He'd say I was making the rest of them look bad. I'd explain I wasn't trying to, just wasn't drinking that night. He'd ask if I was scared of having fun. I'd tell him I had plenty of fun without alcohol. It happened at every single outing. Birthdays, Friday happy hours, the holiday party. Every time he'd zero in on my non-alcoholic drink and make it a thing. I tried every deflection I could think of. I said I was driving. I said I wasn't feeling it. I said I just preferred soda. Nothing worked. He always pushed. He'd joke that one drink wouldn't kill me. He'd act like my choice not to drink was somehow a personal offense to him. Some of my other co-workers noticed and would try to redirect him, but he always found a way to bring it back to my drink choice. Last Friday, we had a happy hour to celebrate someone's promotion. I was genuinely happy for the guy and wanted to be there to show support. I went to the bar and ordered a Coke. I should have known what was coming. He appeared next to me at the bar with this disappointed look on his face. He told me it was kind of rude that I wasn't even drinking for Mike's promotion. I repeated that I was fine with soda. Then he pushed further, asking what the real reason was. He rattled off possibilities like it being a religious thing or me being on medication. Something in me just broke. I've been dealing with this for months. I'd given him every out I could think of. I tried to deflect, to change subjects, to just ignore it. Nothing worked. He kept pushing and pushing like my personal choices were some kind of challenge he needed to overcome. I told him the truth. I explained that I was a recovering alcoholic and that I've been sober for 4 years. I told him that the last time I drank, I wrapped my car around a telephone pole and killed my best friend who was in the passenger seat. I asked if that was a good enough reason for him. His face went completely white. The color just drained right out. He stood there frozen, mouth slightly open, like his brain was trying to process what I just said. I told him flatly that no, I wouldn't be having just one beer. Not ever again. I thanked him sarcastically for asking. I grabbed my Coke and walked back to the table. My hands were shaking a little, but I also felt this weird sense of relief. I've been carrying that secret around at work for so long, trying to just blend in and be normal, and now it was out there. He left the happy hour about 10 minutes later, just grabbed his jacket and walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. Since then, my phone has been blowing up with apologetic texts from him, long paragraphs about how sorry he is, how he had no idea, how he never would have pushed if he'd known. At work, he can barely look at me. He finds reasons to leave the room when I walk in. A few co-workers who overheard the conversation have had mixed reactions. Some told me he had it coming, and they were glad someone finally shut him down. Others said I went too far and didn't need to trauma dump on him like that. They said I should have just told him to drop it, without going into the graphic details about what happened. I get both sides. Yes, it was heavy. Yes, it made things awkward. But I tried being nice for months and it didn't work. How many times was I supposed to deflect before I was allowed to be honest about why I don't drink? My wife says he absolutely had it coming, and that maybe he'll think twice before pressuring people about their personal choices. Part of me feels bad that he's clearly shaken up about it, but another part of me thinks maybe this was a lesson he needed to learn. Not everyone who doesn't drink is just being uptight or boring. Sometimes there are real serious reasons behind those choices. The texts keep coming. He keeps apologizing over and over, saying he feels terrible, asking if there's anything he can do to make it right. I haven't responded yet. I don't really know what to say. Part of me wants to tell him it's fine and we can move past it. Another part of me thinks he should sit with this discomfort for a while, the same way I've been sitting with discomfort every time he pestered me about drinking. I don't remember most of this myself since I was only 5 when it happened, but my dad loves telling this story. He brought it up again a few months ago at dinner, and honestly, it's pretty wild how some people just can't mind their own business. Back then, my family wasn't doing great financially. My parents had been saving up for months to take me and my sister to this dinosaur-themed amusement park a few hours away from where we lived. My dad had been putting away $20 here and there from each paycheck, and my mom had been doing the same. It took them about 6 months to save up enough for the tickets, gas, and food for the day. It was supposed to be this big special trip because we didn't get to do stuff like that very often. My dad had been working double shifts at the factory, sometimes not getting home until 11 p.m. My mom had picked up extra hours at her job too, working weekends when she normally had them off. They really wanted to give us a nice family day out. The park itself looked amazing from the pictures I've seen. It had these huge dinosaur models everywhere, rides themed after different prehistoric eras, and apparently the food court was shaped like a giant meteor crater. The tickets alone cost $45 per person, which was a lot for us back then. My sister and I had been excited about it for weeks. We'd watched every dinosaur documentary we could find at the library and kept talking about which rides we wanted to go on first. I remember my sister had made a list of all the dinosaurs she wanted to see, and I'd been practicing my dinosaur roars. We got there early in the morning, around 9 a.m. My dad wanted to make sure we got there right when it opened so we could get the most out of the day. For the first couple of hours, everything was perfect. My sister and I went on this ride that simulated flying over a volcano, and we got these little paleontologist hats from one of the gift shops. My dad spent $8 on those hats, but he said it was worth it to see us smile. My parents seemed really happy seeing us enjoy ourselves. My mom bought us ice cream shaped like dinosaur eggs, and we ate them while watching this animatronic T-Rex show. My dad kept taking pictures with this disposable camera he'd brought along. He'd bought 2 of them just to make sure he could capture the whole day. We'd already gone on 4 rides and seen 2 shows by the time lunch rolled around. Then around midday, maybe 12:30 p.m., while we were waiting in line for the next ride, my dad's phone rang. Back then, cell phones weren't as common, but my dad had gotten one recently because his job required him to be on call sometimes. He stepped away from the line to take it, and I remember watching his face change. He went really pale and quiet. The call lasted maybe 3 minutes, but it felt longer. When he came back over, he pulled my mom aside and told her what happened. Our great-grandmother had just passed away. She'd been sick for a while, but it was still sudden. The hospital had called my uncle first, and he'd called my dad right away. She was this incredibly sweet woman who used to make us cookies whenever we visited and always had butterscotch candies in her purse. She'd taught my sister how to knit and had been teaching me too, even though I wasn't very good at it. My great-grandfather had been married to her for over 60 years. They'd met when they were both 18 and had been together ever since. My parents told me and my sister right there. They didn't want to hide it from us, and honestly, I think they were too shocked themselves to pretend everything was fine. My dad knelt down to our level and explained it as gently as he could. My sister started crying immediately. She was 8 and understood death better than I did. She'd been really close to our great-grandmother and had just visited her in the hospital 2 weeks before. I didn't really get it at first, but seeing my sister cry made me cry too. My mom was trying to hold it together, but I could see tears in her eyes. My dad just looked devastated, like someone had knocked the wind out of him. We didn't leave the park right away because we'd driven so far to get there, and my parents had already paid for the full day tickets. The drive had taken us almost 3 hours. My dad also said that the funeral arrangements wouldn't be happening until the next day at the earliest, so there wasn't anything we needed to rush back for. But none of us felt like going on rides anymore. We just kind of wandered around in a daze. My sister and I weren't running around excited like before. We were just walking slowly next to our parents, holding their hands. My dad tried to get us to eat some lunch around 1:30 p.m., but none of us were really hungry. We sat at the table in the food court and just picked at our food. At some point, maybe around 2 p.m., we sat down on a bench near one of the big dinosaur statues to rest. It was a huge brachiosaurus, and normally I would have been excited about it. I was sitting there with my sister, both of us pretty quiet and sad looking, when this woman approached us. She had this huge smile on her face and was dressed in bright colors with a fanny pack around her waist. She looked like she was having the best day of her life. She walked right up to us and told us in this really chipper voice that we should smile more. She went on about how our parents must have paid a lot of money for us to be at the park and that we should be happy about it. She even said something about how kids these days don't appreciate what they have. She said it in this scolding tone like we were being ungrateful brats or something. My parents were standing a few feet away talking quietly about whether we should just go home. My dad heard her and started walking back toward us, but before he could say anything, I spoke up. I told her that our grandma had died. My voice was small and sad, and I remember feeling confused about why this stranger was being mean to us. Now, my dad says I actually said grandma and not great-grandma because at 5 years old, I didn't really understand the difference between those terms yet. To me, she was just grandma. I didn't know about the whole great part, but apparently, that distinction made this moment even more awkward for Karen, because saying grandma made it sound more immediate, like we'd just lost someone even closer. My dad describes what happened to her face as watching someone's soul leave their body. The smile just completely vanished. Her eyes went wide and her mouth opened a little like she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out what. Her face turned red, not from anger, but from embarrassment. She started backing away, almost stumbling over her own feet. She stammered out something about how she didn't know and that she was sorry. Her voice had completely changed from that chipper tone to something quiet and mortified. Then she turned around and practically speed walked away from us, disappearing into the crowd near the snack stands. My dad said he'd never seen someone retreat so fast. She didn't even look back. He came over and sat down with us, putting his arms around me and my sister. He asked us if we were okay, his voice soft and concerned. I told him that lady was weird, which made my sister actually laugh a little. That was the first time she'd smiled since we got the news. My dad chuckled too, though he still looked sad. He said that sometimes people don't think before they talk. We stayed at the park for maybe another hour until around 3 p.m. and then drove home. My parents figured we'd already spent the money and driven all that way, so we might as well stay a bit longer. We went on one more ride, a gentle boat ride through a prehistoric swamp, and then headed out. The car ride back was quiet but not in a terrible way, just everyone processing what had happened. My sister fell asleep about an hour into the drive, and I dozed off too. My parents talked quietly in the front seat about funeral plans and who they needed to call. We got home around 6:30 p.m., and my dad immediately started making phone calls to other family members. We went to the funeral a few days later on a Thursday morning. My great-grandfather was absolutely heartbroken. My dad said he'd never seen someone look so lost. During the service, my great-grandfather held her favorite scarf and barely said a word. He just sat there staring at her casket. Great-grandpa lived for another 3 years after that, but according to my dad, he was never quite the same. He moved slower, talked less, and seemed like he was just going through the motions. He missed her every single day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.